You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Locked On Mets is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. On the show today, a really unfortunate Mets loss to discuss. They had a 4-0 lead and it all evaporated. Had a chance to win this series in Philadelphia early. Now they're going to have to try to come back and rally in a rubber match on Sunday. We'll talk about the game in the first segment. Second segment, a lot of injury news to discuss. What's the latest on Lindor? How Luisangel Acuña fit into this roster? Is Starling Marte going to be out? Another update on Paul Blackburn. We'll go through it all. Before we do, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, as you all know, I have been out of town this weekend. If you haven't tuned in the last couple days, let you know now. I've been out of town visiting my sister's family to celebrate my 29th birthday, which was today. And it was going so great, guys. It was just, the Mets are coming off the blowout last night. Sure, Francisco Lindor was taking the day off to rest. Let that back heal a little bit. Totally cool. Luisangel Acuña in the starting lineup, so it was fun to watch him get out there for the first time. And the Mets jump out to an early lead. Felt like, okay, the Mets are going to win this series. You start dreaming about sweeping. You start thinking about the division. Your mind just starts running, doesn't it? Because that's what happens as a fan. I told you 2 nights ago, don't even consider the New York Mets winning the NL East because so much has to happen for that to actually be a realistic possibility that it's just ridiculous to even go there. And I was going there because the Mets looked so good early in this game after blowing them out the night before. And I'm thinking to myself, man, you know what? If you really dive into the numbers recently, sure, the Phillies got off to that ridiculous start to their season. I remember my series preview, what I said, it was like 55-22. I think that was the record, 55-22 through June, something like that, right? They were 30 games over, just this great team. But if you look at the season from June on till now, who's had the best record in this division? The Mets. So all of a sudden, my mind is going to all these places that it shouldn't, and I'm dreaming big. But that's what happens with baseball. You get humbled, and the Mets certainly did late on in this game. But let's start from the beginning here, because the Mets do have a nice open to this game. First inning, they were facing Kolby Allard. You're looking at a 4A arm, and by the way, a really good first game for Luisangel Acuña. Not just his performance, but a good decision by this front office on where to put him in there. Obviously, Lindor's injury opens up an opportunity to start, but you have him go up against a guy that's a left-handed pitcher who is sort of a 4A guy. So pretty much an arm similar to what he's been seeing in Syracuse all year. So I thought this was a really great opportunity for him. He does get a hit his first time up, but the Mets scored before that. Jose Iglesias was batting leadoff for the first time this year. He got a base hit. Vientos and Nimmo both struck out, but then there was 3 consecutive walks drawn. Pete Alonso, J.D. Martinez to load the bases, and then Starling Marte, a bases-loaded walk. Unfortunately, Francisco Alvarez flew out, so that ended the threat, stranded 2 runners, but you got on the board. And Luis Severino looked lights out early, struck out the side in the first inning, and that's going through Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper. So I felt great, okay? Second inning, the Mets weren't able to do much, but still, Severino carving, retired the side in order. Third inning, it felt like the Mets broke the game open. Mark Vientos with the leadoff double. Brennan with the base hit to put runners at first and third. Pete Alonso hits a ground ball to the third baseman, Cody Clemens. He makes a bad throw, so Alonso is safe. Vientos scores. Mets up 2-0. Couple batters later, Starling Marte hits a triple, which I believe hit off the glove of Bryson Stott, trying to make a catch, goes into right center field, clears the bases, so the Mets are up 4-0. Unfortunately, they couldn't get Marte in from third base. That was a big missed opportunity Alvarez struck out. Had he flew out in the second at bat, struck out in the first one, things would have been much better. But regardless, the Mets have a 4-0 lead. They are sitting pretty. And again, Sevy was pitching really well. The Phillies go to the bullpen in the fourth inning, and it's old friend Taijuan Walker, who's now pitching out of the pen, no longer a starter for them because he's been so bad this year. He comes on, and Acuña gets a leadoff single. You're already thinking, all right, is he going to try to steal a base? He never gets the chance. Jose Iglesias hits into a double play ball. And all of a sudden, the Mets lineup, they sort of just faded. I mean, Vientos did single there, but the Mets could not string together any other offense beyond that, and they missed an opportunity because Taijuan Walker has a 6.29 ERA this year, and he put up 3 zeros. That got the Phillies right through the sixth inning. Bryce Harper hit a solo homer in the bottom of the fourth, and then this is where the game gets bad. So Mets up 4-1. Sevy dealing low pitch count. Thinking, maybe he'll get through 7 potentially. Who knows what's going to happen here? He gets the first couple outs in the sixth, and then a just brutal walk to Trey Turner. You can't issue a walk to Trey Turner with Bryce Harper up behind him, and not to mention 3-0 is what he started him with. Did not throw a strike until the fourth pitch. Battled back into the at-bat, got it to a full count, but still loses him. And then Bryce Harper makes him pay, hits a 2-run homer. Harper had not homered since August 9th. In my stupid company, Just Baseball, had to tweet something out about that today on my birthday, putting the jinx out there, and sure enough, the guy has a 2-home run game. So I was frustrated. I'll tell you what, at this point, 4-3, Mets are winning. My nephew Derek asked me to go outside and play catch. So I was like, you know what? I can catch up on this game later. I'm only here for a couple days. So I'm going to go outside and play catch. So I go out there, and we were playing catch. Actually, at this point, I think I started pushing them on their little swing setup back because I was definitely watching during the really unfortunate bottom of the seventh inning where the Mets go to the bullpen. Danny Young comes on, gives up 2 consecutive hits to lead things off. Sacrifice bunt by Brendan Marsh. He makes a good play on it, gets that out at first. Great catch by Jose Iglesias with Marsh, bearing in on him, basically a collision there. But Reed Garrett comes on, gets a big strikeout. You think maybe he's going to get his way through it. He throws one to Cal Stevenson with 2 outs, 2 on. Pitch that, if you really look at it, it was not that bad. And Garrett said after the game, he was looking to execute there, full count. He said it would have been worse to walk him. Cal Stevenson is not some stud hitter. But a splitter out and away, somehow Stevenson gets his bat on it, rips it into right field, and it's a double that scores 2. The Phillies have the lead. Pretty much all she wrote. Next inning, though, with the 5-4 game still, J.D. Martinez gives one for a ride, and Cal Stevenson robs a homer. And that's when you just knew that it was over. That's when I stopped watching for good, I think. That's when it was where we started playing catch. And I found out later that the Phillies tacked on one more against Ryan Stanek. But regardless, this is a bad loss for the Mets. There's no way around it. You had a series in hand. But what I would say is if I told you 2 days ago the Mets would be even through 2 games, you would take it. And yes, this is one that they gave away. Severino walking Turner, giving up that homer. It starts off the momentum going into the Phillies' favor. And it's just a game where a good team beats you. It's as simple as that. And I don't want to make any more of this than that. I will say, I'm doing a little bit of scoreboard watching as I'm recording right now. The Braves are beating the Dodgers. So there's a chance that we're looking at an even race again. You can't get carried away with that, right? You just got to turn the page to tomorrow. Hopefully the Mets can get a victory and they can end up with the series win. Come on home, have a good homestand. And this is not the beginning of the end for this team. I'm definitely not jumping off the bridge. I'm definitely not hopping off the bandwagon. It was just a very frustrating loss. The question is, how do they turn the page from here? And I didn't even mention Starling Marte gets drilled in the forearm in this game. He could be out for a little bit. Give you another update on Lindor as well as Paul Blackburn. So we're going to talk some injuries in the next segment. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. If that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all of Sunday pregame moneyline bets. That's all this Sunday today, pregame moneyline bets. Profit Boost starts on Thursdays. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. Starling Marte had a great game today. He went 2 for 2, he drew a walk, he drove in 3 runs, and then he got hit by a pitch. Not only did he get hit by a pitch, he got hit by a pitch in a really hard place, or really bad place, I should say, to get hit by a pitch. Right in the forearm. Just got drilled. Now, we don't know what's going to happen here, if he's injured, if he's not. All we know is he's getting sent in for x-rays, and as I'm recording this now, that's the only update that I have for you. I will say, with the way the Mets' luck has been going lately, Jeff McNeil getting hit by a curveball that was, 74 miles per hour on the wrist, where he had a guard. If he breaks his wrist on that, something tells me a fastball to the forearm might break Starling Marte's arm, but that's just pure speculation. We really don't know if Marte goes down. This team gets thinner, and all of a sudden, DJ Stewart, who was just optioned today for Luisangel Acuña, he might be coming right back up, and it's just a really unfortunate set of circumstances for the New York Mets, especially if you go back even further with Brett Beatty hurting his finger. Beatty would be getting some run on this team, whether that's second base, third base, who knows, but he would have gotten some opportunities here, and now all of a sudden the injuries are starting to pile for the New York Mets, and that's not a good thing. Now, can they get by without Starling Marte just like they've been getting by without Jeff McNeil? Yes, but all that depth that we talked about, it's starting to go away, and I think that's ultimately why the Mets made the decision that they did to bring up Acuña. Now, I talked about this on yesterday's show. The Acuña promotion was independent of Lindor going down. They were making that decision. They had scratched him from the lineup prior to Lindor's injury. Just happened to work out that he was able to get a start today because of Lindor's injury. Everything that we've heard today, that the Mets are just being cautious with Francisco Lindor. Yes, he was still sore. It was sort of a game-time decision. And about an hour and a half before the game, when it was getting closer and closer, Lindor basically said it wasn't fair to whoever had to start, that they wouldn't know until about first pitch. So the Mets just made the decision, let's shut it down. Let's have him rest for the day. Because ultimately, you got to prioritize his health long-term. Now, I would assume that Lindor is going to be right back out there on Sunday. If he's not, well, that's a huge cause for concern. All of a sudden, Luisangel Acuña is their starting shortstop, and that's a drastic drop-off. Yes, Acuña did look good today. He got 2 hits, but I just want you to temper your expectations with Acuña because he did not thrive in AAA this year. Anyone that thinks that I'm a hater for some of the Acuña takes I've had and felt justified today when Acuña gets 2 hits, it's fair. He had a good first game. But I'm working off of a year of sample, a year of data in AAA that just has not been great. So in a small role, I think he can be very good. And I do think the Mets made the right call because DJ Stewart was not adding any value to your roster. Luisangel Acuña gives you a really good defender at short, at second, and center. A guy that, can hit a little bit and can run. So you now have 2 guys who are those utility speedsters with Eddie Alvarez and Luisangel Acuña. And you also have to remember, Eddie Alvarez is not eligible for the postseason roster. So I also mentioned this when Alvarez joined this team, that there was going to be room for Acuña to come up at some point and then be part of a playoff roster. So now you're letting him fill that role now. I think that is a good thing. I like the promotion of Acuña under these circumstances. And honestly, I wanted them to go to Acuña instead of Pablo Reyes at the time. I was not even expecting Pablo Reyes. Now, they end up getting Eddie Alvarez, and I think that complements Iglesias more, makes some sense as the left-handed bat. But You now have multiple options there for speed and defense. I think that's a good thing. The problem's going to be if Starling Marte goes down because, like I said, if it's DJ Stewart replacing him, you're getting thinner and thinner. And I would say at that point, Jesse Winker's got to be in there almost every day. And when he's not in there, you got to go right back to the outfield that you had prior to Winker, actually. But when Starling Marte first went down with the other injury with the knee, you have to go back to Tyrone Taylor, Harrison Bader, Brendan Nimmo, and just play your defense first outfield. The thing that's unfortunate is if Jeff McNeil was still on this roster, you'd have more coverage for Starling Marte going down. So it's just a rough set of circumstances. Hopefully Marte is fine. We'll see. And I'll obviously talk about that a ton on tomorrow's show. But for now, the biggest thing is just making sure Lindor's okay. And if Lindor gets back in the lineup, I think the Mets are ultimately going to be fine. And David Peterson's got to show up and have an incredible start. It's that simple. The Mets need David Peterson to really deliver here. And if the Mets can win this rubber match, you went to Philadelphia, you did your job, you come on home, you have the Nationals, try to handle business against them, and gear up for another series against Philly. It's going to be a tough next 8 days here. And it doesn't get any easier. Then you just have an off day, and then you're off to Atlanta. But the New York Mets are still in a good position. Yes, it sucks. They had a big lead, and they should have won today. Luis Severino, it really looked like he was trending towards a long start where he was going to save the bullpen and where he was hopefully going to pitch the Mets to a victory. Bryce Harper got him a couple times and just sort of is what it is. And now I will tell you that I am looking at this score of the Braves-Dodgers game one more time. 9-1 Braves through 6. So it looks like they will be even. And we just got to take this race day by day. That's what it comes down to. I'll check the other two scores really quick, although I don't think those games have really got going in earnest yet. Padres first, top of the second inning, they're up 1-0. D-backs 12-0 Brewers. That's a good sign. So the Mets won't lose ground there. Should probably be, I would assume, if things hold still, the Braves and the Mets will be even, and the Diamondbacks will be a game up of them. And maybe the Brewers can keep beating up on the Diamondbacks because, as I've mentioned a lot lately, they're going to see a lot of the Brewers. They got a series in between against the Rockies, and then it's right back to facing the Brewers for a 4-game set. So this race is wide open still. Let's not freak out too much. Rough loss, but the Mets can get right back on that horse, get in the win column, and still have a very productive week. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I will be back. Normal show on Monday, 3 segments, video, audio, the whole deal, and I will give you all the latest on this NL wildcard race, what happened in this series, and preview lies ahead against Washington at home. So make sure, if you're listening on the audio side, you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the season, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. If you want to follow me on X, you can do so at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day, not for your second watch. Head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything, the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.